Avalon is my favorite social deduction game. And so when Indie Board and Cards said that they were coming out with a big box version, which threw in all the additional roles, all of the promos from the previous game, all into one beautiful, delightful package, I was excited. I was less excited when they were calling it Quest, and then they clearly realized the error of their ways because now they're calling it Avalon. So Avalon, if you're unfamiliar, it comes from the Resistance Avalon. This one. It's the exact same game as the Resistance Avalon, just with a bunch more stuff. And so what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Avalon if you've never played the game before, why I think it is one of the best social deduction games out there, and then show you what is new in this new version. So basically you can decide for yourself if you're a fan of Avalon, you have the original, if the additional roles and the additional extra stuff in here is worth the pretty much double the price point. This is about 20 bucks Canadian, and this I think was about 40 bucks Canadian when I purchased it. When I forgot it after I had set up an Avalon night at a friend's house and then forgot to bring the thing that I wanted to try out and had to run to the store and purchase another copy and just give it to my friend. But that was fine because we really liked the game and I was happy to do that. To my former friend and now nemesis, Josh. Josh, remember, if you're watching this, that footage might see the light of day and people will see how you behaved, and I expect a Christmas present, early birthday present in return. This copy was sent to me by a publisher, but if it wasn't, I would have been happy to purchase it because I do really love Avalon. So if you're unfamiliar with the Resistance or the Resistance Avalon, it's a very simple premise. There's a good team and a bad team. The good team don't know anything, and the bad team know who each other are, but there are less of them. And it's the bad team's job to pretend like they're the good team, and it's a good team's job to try to figure out who the bad team is. This is the same premise as the Resistance. Well, this is the premise of the Resistance. This is the same premise as Mafia, as Werewolf, as Blood on the Clock Tower, as any hidden social deduction game. You have a good team, you have a bad team, you want to figure out who's who. Now, why I have always thought the Resistance Avalon is better than the Resistance is because it adds in a few extra roles. In the Resistance Avalon, you get the role of Merlin, who is always in the base game. And now Merlin gets to know who everybody is. They get to know who all the bad people are. And they can use that information to help the team. And you're probably thinking, well, that's dumb. If Merlin knows who the bad people are, everyone can open their eyes and Merlin can just say, hey, those three are the bad people. Good wins the game. And that's true if the bad people didn't have a fail-safe. Because if good ends up winning because of the power of Merlin, the bad also have an assassin on their team, and they have one last chance to pick who was Merlin around the table. And if they pick correctly, it doesn't matter what good did, Merlin has been murdered, and everything that you've worked for is for naught. Avalon also adds in a few other roles, which we'll get into when we talk about the roles. And the reason why I do love Avalon, and I think Blood on the Clock Tower does this very well as well, it's better than Werewolf and better than Mafia, which is just Werewolf but not using werewolves, using Mafia members, is because nobody is ever eliminated from the game. In Werewolf and Mafia, you vote to kill people every night, and they are dead, and then they have to sit in silence while everybody else has fun. In Avalon, you are specifically picking people to be on a number of teams. Now, depending upon the number of players, there will be a bunch of different player boards. So if there are 7 players playing, you will have 3 minions of Mordred, and the first quest, 2 people will be nominated to go on. And those 2 people will be voted on by the group. The group will either put in an approve or a reject. If you think that is a good team, you will reveal approve. If you think it's a bad team, you will reveal reject, for whatever reasons you want. If the majority of the players vote approve, then those 2 players, you and I, obviously, because we're both on the good team, we will go on a mission and we will get 2 cards, a success and a fail. The good team, here represented by this yellow emblem, must always put in success. The bad team has the option of putting in either a success or a fail, because you could put in a success and everyone could think, hooray, we've got good people on the team. Or you could put in a fail and reveal, uh-oh, one of those people is bad, and bad would get a point. Because it's the first team to get to 3 points wins the game. And so bad gets a point anytime there's one fail on the quest, unless you are playing a specific player count, in which the fourth quest, usually there are 2 fails required. And then good gets a point anytime there are all successes. And so whoever gets that final point will win the game. Or if you happen to get 3 points immediately early on, well then, hey, you're just better than everybody and you win the game. And so the structure of this means that nobody's out of contention. Everybody gets a chance to propose a team. The person who gets to propose a team, that moves around the table in a clockwise manner. People get to always vote on if they want that team to go through or not, and people always get to talk about who they think is bad and who they think is good. Even if somebody's been outed by deduction or whatever reason because they have a bad poker face and they're cracking a smile, there's always a chance for them to get back into the game. And that's what I love about Avalon. I think, and the Resistance, but I like Avalon specifically because of the extra rolls, because I think having an extra roll is always fun, and having a little bit of more of these information style rolls gives a bit more ability for deduction around the circle. Otherwise, sometimes it's just, what are people thinking? The reason I also love Avalon is because of this voting pattern. Not only are you voting on approving or denying a team, which if you can remember, you can gather information and see people's voting patterns and seeing who they're approving and who they're not approving. But you can also see what teams people put forward and why they might do that thing. It provides a lot of actual real information that you then have to decide if someone's trying to lead you astray or not to base your decision upon. And because of that, I just think it's such a fun, exceptionally fun game that I have had hours and hours of awesome times with. Now, I will say that the time on the box, at least the time on this box, said 15 minutes. The time on this box says 30 minutes. They've upped it. Oh no, it said 30 minutes this time. I've never played a game of this in 30 minutes. Maybe I have at the lower player count. Often it takes like an hour, hour and a half, because, well, I am part of a very talkative group and I play this with very talkative people. And that is also how I love to play this game, with people talking and strategizing and trying to figure out who's lying and who's not. It can create such an awesome, memorable experience. I'm going to film, well actually I have filmed a couple games of Avalon, but I didn't film it in a way that the audio makes sense. It's not the greatest job in terms of setting up mics, and so I think that footage is basically scrapped. That was actually at the game night where I had to purchase a new copy so that we could actually play the game. Yeah, I have filmed a couple games because I think it is just such a fun game to watch as well. I love watching a game. I love watching a game not knowing who anybody is. I love watching a game knowing who one person is. And so I'd like to do a little bit of that on the channel, but it just requires a lot of logistics because, of course, there's a lot of shouting. But that's the general idea of Avalon. I think this game is phenomenal. If you love social deduction, you've probably already played it and you probably have your own opinions on it. If you haven't liked playing things like Werewolf, for the reasons that I described, of it being a bit too random, there's no real information other than what people are saying, and people getting eliminated and just having to sit out while everybody plays and has fun, then I would absolutely recommend checking out Avalon and giving social deduction, the genre, another chance. But let's move ahead into the roles that exist and the different things that you can find in this game, because there's a lot of different things and I haven't played with all of them yet, but I am excited to play with each one. There's a whole cheat sheet of the good and the bad characters here that we're gonna go through. From the base game, let's just look at it now. We have our loyal servants of Arthur and Merlin. I have it kind of already separated. Loyal servants and Merlin, that's the base game. And then we have our minions of Mordred, which in this edition, it's weird because these have a yellow back to them. And then the good emblem has a blue back, but then their emblem is like a yellow emblem. Why they did this design, I don't know. It's worse from the previous edition, where it was a lot clearer who was who, because you have things like, oh, clearly blue, and then clearly bad and bad. So I have run into issues of people not understanding if they were on the good or the bad team, but that also could have been, my explanation. But here we have the minion of Mordred. It does say it at the bottom. These are our standard minions of Mordred, and then we have the assassin who can kill Merlin at the end. Then from the original game, we have Percival. Percival was in the first box of Avalon. There's one of the few roles. Percival gets to know who Merlin is. Put this in a better order. Then we have Mordred, who is unknown to Merlin, so Merlin gets to see two thumbs if there were three people, and Mordred doesn't have to reveal themselves in that sort of revealing phase. Then we have the Lunatic, which is a new player on the bad team. The Lunatic must fail every quest. So if there is a Lunatic, they're guaranteed to fail every quest. And so this gives the good a little bit more information. What I do love about the rule book on this one is that they say when they're breaking it down, it says this will make good better and this will make evil have a harder time. So if you find with your group, good is always winning or evil's always winning, you can use these rules to balance things out. So we have the Lunatic who must fail every quest. He's pretty fun. Oberon, who is unknown to evil and does not know evil. So Oberon's on the bad team, but they don't know who their other bad compatriots are. So that's an interesting one to play. That one's also in the original game. Morgana, who if you're playing with Percival, you can play with Morgana. Morgana appears as Merlin. So Percival will see someone who's Merlin and someone who's bad. And as Morgana, you want to convince Percival that you're the good one right off the bat. And then we have now we're going to move into our new character phases. We have the untrustworthy servant, who will appear as evil to Merlin and who will know who the assassin is and can become evil at the recruitment stage. And so the untrustworthy servant is interesting. Depending on how you're playing, Merlin won't be able to trust them. Merlin will think that they are bad, but they also know who the assassin is. And if they're too obvious about what they say, then their alignment will change. So they don't want to just stand up and say, hey, I'm the untrustworthy servant, this person's the assassin, because then they will become evil inevitably and they'll lose the game, right? They don't want to do this. They can do this, though, and that's where this one could become a little bit tenuous. I think we had an untrustworthy servant in the game, and they kind of just stood up and said it and said, I don't think people will choose me to become evil at the end because they'll think I'm bluffing, and kind of just outed somebody. So that wasn't that great. The revealer is bad, but they must show themselves after the second failed quest. So they're incentivized to get onto the quests early and fail them early, because then they're going to be basically a useless role after that. The brute may fail only the first 3 quests. So the brute is on the evil team, but they don't want to be on at the end. So it gives, again, good a little bit more power at the end of the game. The cleric gets to secretly investigate the first leader. They get to see the first person who chose the mission or the team to go on the mission. They get to see what their alignment is, and they're on the side of good. The trickster, though, may lie about their loyalty. So if you're playing something with the cleric or something with like the Lady of the Lake, where people can see people's alignment, they can lie and say that they're on the good team and then really be trusted when in fact they're the trickster. So it adds a little bit of unknown to it. And in fact, the troublemaker is good, but they must lie about their loyalty because they always have to say that they're bad if they're investigated in capacity. Like they don't have to just shout over and over, I'm the troublemaker, I'm bad. But it gives, again, evil a chance to bluff that they are the troublemaker and they aren't just revealed by a information revealing role. So I like how those exist. And then we get on to some of the fun ones. These are some that I've played with. I really like the sorcerers. When you're playing with sorcerers, you have to play with both a good and a sorcerer. And with the sorcerers, they're allowed to play a magic card. So the evil sorcerer can't play a fail. They can only play a magic card or a success, and same with the good sorcerer. And the thing about a magic card is that it reverses the decision of what happens on the different rolls. So if everybody succeeded it, but I put a magic card in, well, then it's actually a fail. But if it failed, and you as the good sorcerer thought it was going to fail, you can put a magic card in and you can flip that decision so it can actually succeed. And so you get into this opportunity of, well, should I do it or should I not? Maybe the good player can just tank the game for the good team, or maybe they can be a hero by reading somebody's intention. And I just think the possibilities for that is really, really fun. And then we also have, in terms of good and evil, 2 sides. This was a promo card for the original Avalon. Now it's in this big box, which is only slightly bigger. But this complete version, right? Which is Lancelot. So evil Lancelot and good Lancelot, they know who each other are. If you start out as good Lancelot, you know who one evil person is at the beginning of the game, and you're basically like, hey, that's the other Lancelot. However, you can switch allegiances during the game. So each round you're going to draw a card, and it might make the Lancelot switch allegiances. There are actually a couple of different rule sets that we're not going to go through all of them for Lancelot, but that's what they basically do. Now rogues have a interesting, again, a specific card that they can play. It's a rogue success versus just a regular success. So not only do they out themselves as being a rogue, but if you get a number of rogue successes, rogues have kind of their own individual win condition. If they don't get onto a mission and play a rogue success or a rogue fail, they don't win with their team. They get a partial victory, but no, you don't win with your team. So you have incentivized to get on the mission and kind of reveal yourself as that person who wanted to be on the mission. And finally, lastly, we have the messengers who can play message cards, evil messages or good messages. And if there are a certain number of evil messages or good messages, they provide reinforcements at the end of the game for those sort of final votes and can turn the tide of battle, basically. So if you want a larger game with that, you've got those characters. So those are basically all of the characters, but it's a heap of new roles to play with. Oftentimes with regular Avalon, I don't play with even the roles from the base game, but I've been wanting to play and try out all these different roles with this other version because I think they're cool. The other thing, there's only one other thing that this adds into the game, along with, you know, the classic Lady of the Lake token that was in the base game originally, but there are these extra sort of favor cards, or rather they're referred to as plot cards. And what these are, there are a number of special abilities that the leader gets to give, one-time uses, gets to give to another player. And those players get to do that thing. And sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Sometimes it's force a player to play their quest card face up. So force a player to show if they're putting in a success or a fail. Sometimes it says, hey, if you want, you can become the leader next, you decide on the team, right? So it's these little things that shake up the game and, again, provide more information. Show your strengths. The leader shows their loyalty to the player of their choice. Reveal your loyalty to a player of your choice, right? Take a plot card from another player, so take a thing and do a special ability. There are little things that aren't going to come up, that aren't going to have a huge impact on the game, but again, these little bits of information and powers that you can share around the table, and just to make it a little bit more chaotic and frantic. That's what you get in the big box version. In this little version, the regular box version, this version, you get the Lady of the Lake, you get all the components needed to play the game, and the extra roles are Merlin, Percival, Morgana, Oberon, Mordred. Percival, who can see Merlin, Morgana, who pretends to be Merlin, Mordred, who Merlin doesn't get to know, and Oberon, who the evil people don't get to know. And for me, as I start to put away all the components, you can see the components in here. They also come with little circles that One Night Werewolf has. Basically, you can put them out on the table. If people are unsure as to what roles are in the game, they have some way to easily check on them. I took out the insert for this box because it wasn't fitting, and all these are just kind of cardboard tokens anyway, so I don't really feel like I need to have an organizer. Is completely fine. It's just having that barrel of mess. But for me, the question now comes to, it's not should you purchase Avalon, it's should you purchase the big box expansion. Well, it's not an expansion, the big box, the complete edition. And as an avid fan of Avalon, my answer is, I don't know. It depends, right? For my purposes, while I'm very excited to have all these different roles and the ability to put a few of them in, I love just the base game. I love what the base experience has to offer. I don't necessarily need any of these roles, whereas I find a lot of games like Blood on the Clock Tower, everybody has a role. And the reason for that is so that everybody feels like they can do something special and participate in the game in a certain way, and you can deduce what is out there and have enough information to sway one way or the other. Sure, I think Avalon doesn't need to have those roles because I think there's already enough information built into this base game without having to do that. So while I was expecting for the amount of roles and the possibilities to blow my mind and to create amazing, memorable moments, and the sorcerers did. I mean, the sorcerers didn't let me down. I really had fun playing with the sorcerers and the magic cards. There are a few that do this as the world screams at me for using an elastic band, but I don't know if there were enough to make it worth that double the price point. Now, if you're an avid fan of Avalon and your complaint was, I wish there was more to do, I wish there were more powers, I wish this was more like a standard social deduction game like Werewolf or Mafia, I'd say then absolutely go for the complete collection, because it's well made. I think most of the roles in here are fun. I think it adds a lot of variability that you can swap in your game. If you like being that game master who sets up the perfect scenario for the number of players out there to really create chaos, and everybody who you play with doesn't have trouble following that chaos and are Avalon veterans, then yeah, go for this big box edition. If you just want a solid social deduction game without the frills, I think the regular version is just as good. I don't know if they're going to be producing this anymore. Maybe they have upgraded to this big box edition and they're not having the more affordable version, and this just might be the new edition and the way it is going forward. In that case, if it's your only option, well then yeah, I still think it's completely worth owning. It gets the seal of distinction from me because it is my favorite social deduction game of all time, and it's a genre that I really like. But now that I own this, and I've seen what the powers are, and I've tried them out, I think I would be equally happy or almost as happy just playing the base game with the sort of base characters and what this box provides almost every time. It depends on the group, depends on how much you enjoy the genre, and depends how often you've played this game in particular, but it doesn't blow it out of the water. However, it is a really satisfying, and I am thrilled that this does exist, combining all that sort of promo material into one spot. Anytime people take promo cards that were out of print and put them into a thing that is accessible to the public, that makes me very happy. So of course I'm thrilled to have this Avalon Big Box, and I will probably only play with this version from now on, bringing it places or whatever, just so I have the option. It doesn't matter if I necessarily use it. Sometimes it's just, it's just nice to know that you have the option. Anyway, that's it for me. Hope you found this video helpful. Hit the like and subscribe if you did. If you didn't, well, hit the like and subscribe, because then I'll know that you didn't like it and I'll be better. Seriously, it does help a ton, and it takes moments of your time. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Chris George. I do not have a catchphrase, and that isn't a lie, okay? I'll tell you something, if we ever play this game together, I just want it to be known that I am going to talk a lot regardless, all right? And just because I'm talking a lot doesn't mean that I'm on the bad team. In fact, it might mean that I'm on the good team trying to figure out who the bad team is, which I will inevitably get wrong, and all my talking will lead us to defeat. At least I wasn't bad. I was just bad at the game.